Today is January the 4th, 2022. Today, we're here with JoeMarr Wilson. He's running for the 47th District Court that stretches over Potter, Randall, and Armstrong counties. Joe, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Why don't we tell the voters who you are, and then we'll go into why you're running.
Dan, Panhandle boy, grew up in Groover and Dalhart, went to school at West Texas back before it was A&M, back at West Texas State, and went to law school at Texas Tech School of Law, got out of there in 1988, moved back to Amarillo, practiced law here most of the time by myself ever since. Married to Becky since 1988. She, I don't want to say works for me, works with me. I work for her, I think, sometimes is the way it works out better. Got a daughter named Jody who's a chiropractor in Houston, in the suburb of Houston. And that's pretty much our small family. Been practicing criminal and family law since 1990, did a little bit of civil law before that. And Becky's been working with me since 92, so that's pretty much what our whole family has done ever since.
So you're a sole practitioner?
Sole practitioner. I worked for a gentleman for a couple of 3 years during law school and got out of law when I got out of law school. And after that, I've worked in a firm just with myself, no other partners or anything ever since then.
So what makes you want to be the judge for the 47th District?
Dan, I think that what I see the most is that I can continue on in that capacity of doing a lot of the same things I've been doing for over 30 years, and that's trying to help people, get through really difficult times in their lives. I've done mostly family and criminal and other types of law that is small, that regular people experience and that small businesses experience. And sometimes I see that that's lacking on the bench. So many of those lawyers tend to come from a background either of strictly government or more commonly from civil firms that deal with corporations and insurance companies and things of that a lot. And we deal with the type of people that end up having things heard by judges. And we felt like that, really could do some more good going to a different level, being a judge in a district court that handles those type of cases. I think my perspective will be very good in what can be the right resolution in all their cases, get the cases moved efficiently, save the county's money by moving them more efficiently, and make everybody have a lot of confidence in, at least in my part of the justice system, if I were in that court.
Why don't you explain to the voters what a district judge does?
Okay. A district judge in Texas, generally under the Constitution, is a court of general, presides over a court of general jurisdiction, which means it hears virtually anything on the civil side. It's over, I believe, $500, that hears family law cases and that hears felony criminal cases. Now, in different counties, the judges may determine amongst themselves, if there's more than one district court, that they'll hear only certain cases in certain counties. That's not really a jurisdictional thing. That's just a thing that they decide to do for convenience. In the 47th District Court in Potter County, it hears civil cases of anything from $500 to any amount of money. Here's criminal felony cases. Does not hear family law cases because the judges have agreed that two other courts, or actually four other courts in Potter County, will hear family law cases. In Randall County, it hears all of the cases, which is empowered to hear, which would be civil, family, and criminal. And obviously in Armstrong County, it's the sole district court, so it hears anything that's either a felony or a civil dispute.
So as the judge, you're kind of the administrator. You have the administrative role of managing the employees and the staff of that court. Is that right?
That's correct. That is one aspect of it. You have that administrative role, which would be a direct supervisory role of those people. You also have some other administrative functions promulgated by statute. That would be as one of the voices with the other district judges over control of the adult probation system and also of the county auditors in Potter and Randall County. I don't believe Armstrong County has an auditor. the district judges appoint those positions and oversee, especially the probation department, which is basically more or less an arm of the court.
That's probably a pretty big department.
It is. It's probably one of the bigger. I'm not sure if it's the big. It's not. I'm sure the biggest department in the county because of the sheriff's department, but I think other than the sheriff's department, it is the biggest. It's the second biggest one, and deals with a lot of people coming in and out of there.
So, how would you? Do you have any ideas on how you would run the court differently than it's being run today?
Well, there's a little difficulty in that because the day-to-day functions of the court on a very micro level are kind of hard to know if you're not there. But I think, as far as the personnel, that's not much different than any small businessman would be. You try to have the best people in there you can have that you can recruit for whatever you can pay them and whatever the benefits are. I believe that their setup's really good right now in this court. As far as administering the caseload side of it, there's a lot of different details that you might decide upon, but I think the biggest thing I can add to that is a really good understanding of what the lawyers and the litigants in the cases that take up most of the time of the court, that being criminal and family law cases, what the needs are, what the dynamics, I guess would be the better word, of those cases are, and to try to balance the time you can spend on these cases to give them the best hearing you can give them, and also move the cases as fast as you can within the realms of justice. You obviously don't want to move cases just for the sake of moving cases, but if you can do the best you can for people at the fastest pace possible, that pace also helps most of the time. People generally want to get on with their lives if they have some sort of legal dispute. So the faster you can do it and do the right job, the best you can. I think having been in that world as far as handling those types of cases for 30 years, I have an intimate knowledge of what will help, and this might differ in individual cases to some degree, but what would help facilitate those two roles, which is give a fair hearing to people and maximize the tax expenditure by moving the cases as fast as possible.
I guess, is the district court a revenue source for the county with the probation department and that sort of thing?
It's hard to say. Up until several years ago, it would have been a resounding no. Once they started looking at collections and trying to accelerate collections on both a probation aspect with people that are on probation and even people that aren't on probation, of trying to collect court costs and fine money after people have served their sentence, whether that be a misdemeanor jail sentence or a prison sentence, I think that the revenue is increased somewhat. I don't know that it's ever going to pay for itself. I just don't know that function can ever be accomplished. And so there may be some amount of recoup that can be had, more so than there was in the past. But unfortunately, especially on the criminal side, so many of the people that end up in the system, first of all, didn't have a lot of money to begin with. Our court-appointed counsel rate consistently in Potter and Randall County hovers above 85%, if not much higher. So that many of the criminal litigants have to have attorneys paid for by the county. And so if you look at the back end of that, okay, you may can put them on a payout, but realistically, how much money are you going to be able to get back? Now, you're going to get some. And again, if they're on probation, they're going to have to pay that as a condition of probation. Of course, probation has its own costs that are attendant with it that kind of eat into the county getting money back. So yeah. I think it's better. I think it can be better. It can be a very regressive tax, though, when you're feeding people into it that just don't have a lot of money and can't retain counsel, and then trying to make them pay back for that. You just got to be careful on At some point, if they can't pay, all you can do is put them in jail, and that costs money. So it's always this juggling act of how much of it can you incentivize people to do, and then at some point does it become counterproductive because you're having to pay to put them back in jail.
Well, we wish nobody would commit crimes, so we didn't need judges.
That would be very good. That would be really good. Would not mind if that part of my business went away.
Well, there always seems to be somebody that thinks they can beat the system.
That's true. I think that's in all walks of life that happens.
But I think they eventually get caught.
Most of the time they do. Most of the time they do. I truly believe. You see it on a national basis where you got people that have lots of resources, lots of money, that they have to pay the piper at some point if they're trying to cheat the system.
Yeah. So do you have any ideas on how you would improve the court over the way it is now?
Well, and keep in mind, in two of these counties, it's difficult for a district judge to unilaterally do a lot, because you have to make anything work, you're going to have to work in adjunct with the other district judges, and to many extents the county court at law judges. But one thing we've seen work really good, and it's like anything else, you can't spread out and do too much. You can certainly overload yourself, but we've done some what are called impact courts or diversion courts. Our most successful one that we've done so far has been a veterans court, where veterans, if they find themselves in trouble with the law, if they meet certain criteria, that we try to steer them sort of not out of the system, but into a part of the system that can deal with them better with the specific problems they may have, if they're service related or even if they're not, but try to give them help because of their service to this country. That has seemed to be the more responsive. We've had a drug court for a long time. I think expanding that would be helpful. It's pretty labor intensive, so it's hard to keep a lot of people in it, but it seems to have very good results. Recidivism is down. People complete the program at a higher rate than they do normal probation. Those things, they cost a little money, I think, because the courts, certainly like the drug court, I mean, you're using more time for probation officers and such, but if you keep somebody out of the system, that in and of itself is going to save you several $1,000s. So I think those can pay for it. The veterans outreach program or diversion court, the VA helps a lot with that. So we don't have to, I think, absorb as much of the funding there. I think there's some place to go with some other things. Some counties have DWI diversion courts. That might be a thought, although we would want to look a little more at the statistics. A great number of the DWI offenders are one-time offenders, and so that might not be the best expenditure. They may stay out of the system. One area that I've seen in my practice, and I've looked at some of the programs across the state, but it's kind of hard to know exactly what would fit here. Domestic violence cases have become a huge burden on the system, not only because there's so many more of them get filed now, but the nature of them does not lead to quick resolution, because so many times the victims of those offenses, or the alleged victims, actually slow the process down because they immediately do not want the person prosecuted. And so you get in a situation where it's very hard to resolve those cases by agreement, because you got a lot of different people tugging on the string there. There might be a way to divert some of those cases into a less formalistic idea, so that we're not wasting resources on trying those cases, on clogging up the docket, and maybe we can help those individuals have a little better relationships, and we don't get frequent offenders or frequent flyers. So I think there's those aspects of it. And you got to look at what you're talking about, what we're trying to save money on. I mean, a certain amount of things you do in the criminal side of it, you send people to prison. Okay, well, the counties don't bear the direct brunt of that, but the state does as a whole. the county does bear the brunt if they have to sit in jail for a long period of time and until such time as the reimbursement kicks in, which and I do not know the answer to this. I know Governor Abbott suspended that, so the counties weren't getting reimbursed for some period of time during COVID. I do not know if that has been changed back. So, it's difficult in that realm of it. Over on the family law side of it, I don't know. The one thing that courts have done to try to ease docket backload and to reduce resource use is to send as many cases as possible to mediation. There's pros and cons to that. I think we need to maybe look at enhancing and working on a little bit our it's not really taxpayer funded. It's funded by filing fees, but our dispute resolution center through the PRPC that is a lower cost alternative mediation. COVID had a lot to do with the problem there, but maybe trying to figure out a way to ramp that back up where it can handle more cases. Otherwise, people are having to pay for regular mediators that are lawyers, and it's very expensive. And sometimes it's cheaper to go to trial than it is to mediate it. So I'm not a real big believer in forcing people to go mediate. I don't think you should make them have to spend money if they know they're not going to agree to something. But, if we could get a lower cost mechanism out there that can handle more cases, it might take some cases off the docket that, again, stops the drain on resources. I don't know, the courts themselves, their expenditure, if you just look at the court itself, you've got a judge, you've got a bailiff, you've got an administrator, and you've got a court reporter. Those costs are going to remain relatively static, and most of the judges' salaries picked up by the state. You got to have those people. That's a minimum of people. So the actual operating cost of the court's not going to be addressed much. There's not much you can do. So about all you can do is try to lessen the impact on the other branches, the prosecutors, the jails, other collateral resources. That's about all you can do to really try to maximize the financial efficiency.
Is there a big backlog of cases now?
Yeah, it's hard for me to tell if there was already a backlog before COVID, but that's just the nature of the game. I mean, you can't control how many cases the prosecutors file. I mean, if they file them, they have a right to file them. And so, we were always running backlogged a little bit on that. COVID obviously shut us down completely for a year. And while, some aspects of each county, of Potter and Randall County, work to try to find other resolutions to that, there's only so much you can do if you don't have the availability or the threat of trial, depending on which, where you're at in that dynamic, which one that is. There's only so much you can do on that. But yeah, we're backlogged quite a bit. We're also facing a huge crisis because of what I mentioned a while ago about 85 to 90% of the people being indigent and needing court-appointed lawyers, that we have lost a significant number of people who are willing to do that, both because of retirement, moving off, just burnout. Don't want to do it. Don't want to do it for what the county's going to pay. And we've tried to address that. I was on a committee that addressed trying to establish the public defender's office, which we got funded through some grant money, which I'll be honest with you, several years ago, I wasn't in big favor of it, not for any reason other than I didn't think they could be successful in making it work. But we kind of talked about it enough and discussed and debated all the different formats of it, and then that, along with being able to fit some funding into it from the state, but not, knowing we couldn't rely on that for more than 3 or 4 years. I think we came up with a model that we're hoping will take a huge amount of pressure off of the lawyers that are doing court-appointed work, who are just simply getting overwhelmed. I mean, we're down to, I think, under 12 lawyers that can be appointed to first and second degree crimes in either county. and there's a lot of first and second degree crimes filed with people that can't afford lawyers. So we were probably everybody was operating way over the ABA guidelines on how many cases you could have just to help out, and so hopefully this PD's office will help that significantly without being a huge increase in the amount of money that's spent toward indigent defense.
You mentioned earlier that the domestic violence cases have really spiked in the last year. Why do you think that is?
I don't, and I will let me modify or clarify that. They probably did go up in the last year. The trend I've noticed is they've went up significantly over the last several years. I think that initial trend going back several years, to be honest with you, is probably as much a policy determination by law enforcement as it is anything. And this is there's no judgment made on this. I understand completely where they're at on this. Years ago, maybe not that many years ago, I think that on the street officers felt like they had some amount of discretion to make somebody leave for the night or go to mom's house or something to try to defuse the situation. Pretty much, at least what I see now, is they get a 911 call, they show up, anybody says there's been any type of assault, somebody goes to jail. And then that case almost always gets referred up the line because nobody at the police department's willing to say, oh, that's a crappy case, maybe we shouldn't send it. They're afraid they're going to be on the hook for it, and I understand that. It's the way society is now. So they send it to the DA's office, and the same thing happens there. The policy is we're going to file anything if it has any indicia of credibility at all, sometimes maybe even if it has very little, and then we'll just figure it out down the road. Well, the worse those cases are from a factual standpoint, when I say worse, I mean the skimpier they are on evidence, the more likely they are to hang around. And that's, I think, the problem of it. And then again, you have these family dynamics where these people the victim is not seeking to end their family. They simply felt they had no other choice. They called the police and never thought through the consequences. And maybe, and that's hard to say. I mean, you should never tell anybody not to call the police if they're being harmed. And so they have to do that. But the ramifications sometimes are as bad as the offense itself, it seems. And there's not a good answer to that. But to me, that probably started the increase we started seeing several years ago. Obviously, COVID stressed everybody out, and anytime there's a high stress environment, that everybody's feeling or a certain community's feeling, you're probably going to get more emotional offenses, which generally that's what these domestic violence cases are.
Well, maybe that's another program they could look at to figure out how to resolve these situations without having to go all the way through court. Maybe there's a middle ombudsman position they could have to try to work these cases out between the family members before they go forward.
Sure. Like I said earlier, some sort of diversion court, although those are, you're only going to get so many people into it. I think the problem we have is, and it's a clear case of pendulum swinging, which happens in everything, is that for so many years, a woman could get assaulted and the cops would show up and very little would happen. And so that needed to be addressed, and it was. But like everything the government always does, they're always fighting this swing between too little and too much, and so they went the other way on it, where everything's going to be prosecuted no matter what. Well, and then the legislature, takes some responsibility for this, for better or worse. They've changed the law with regard to domestic violence adjudications, whereas if you end up going to court on a domestic violence, even if you get deferred probation, which means you don't get a conviction, then it's going to follow you around the rest of your life. And, I understand there's good intentions behind that. They didn't want people to hide that or that to not be available. But like anything else has good intentions, like they say about the road to hell. I mean, there's going to be something else there. And so there needs to be some balancing that the legislature maybe needs to do, but that's certainly beyond my control and beyond my concept sometimes. So what they could do. But I agree with you. If there could be some sort of, and I'm not talking about counseling in the warm and fuzzy sense, but, just a non-coercive environment where, it can be really stressed that say, hey, this behavior needs to change. Your dynamics need to change within the realm they can. Some people's socioeconomic and cultural environments are such that it's very difficult to change these things. We get a lot of people in Amarillo, more so probably proportionately for our population. We get a lot of people from different cultures, and all of a sudden they have to comply with our norms, and they don't. It's hard to do that. It's hard for anybody to do that, and so we need to have a little more sensitivity toward that without giving up the need we have for enforcing the laws and protecting people. And that's going to be a delicate balance, and sometimes the law is not. It's more of a big sledgehammer and not much of a pair of tweezers where you can kind of move things around in a fine nature. So it's very difficult to do it, even if you have the resources, which we really don't have right now.
Interesting. So why should the voters choose you over your opponents?
Yeah, I think the concepts, the ideas that I want voters to think about is, who would you pick for any job? Wouldn't you normally pick the person that's best qualified? Now, being a judge is a funny thing. The legal qualifications, I need to look, so I make sure I'm not misspeaking, but I think to be a district judge, you have to be 25 years old, and I think practice 3 or 5 years, so basically you have to have a law degree and a pulse to be able to legally be a judge, district judge. But if you've got a choice, wouldn't you choose the person, just like if you're doing anything else? If you've got some sort of fancy imported car and you've got a choice between Joe Shade Tree and you've got a specialty place that works on those type of cars and that's all they work on, well, you're probably going to go to that place because you're going to think they're going to know more about your car. The other analogy that we've used a lot in talking about it is if you went to your primary care physician who let's just say they're just a family physician. I say just, that's the highest calling of physician as far as I'm concerned, but they're a family physician. They treat, the common things that people have, that families have, but they're not a specialist. And if you go in and, you have some tests run and the doctor comes in and says, you need to have open heart surgery. And I'm going to refer you over here to this to this heart surgeon, and he'll do a fine job. But, I've decided that I kind of want to get into surgery. I haven't done it since I was in medical school, haven't had any training in it at all, but I think I want to start doing heart surgery, and I'd be glad to do it for you. Well, no one in their right mind would do that, I would think. And I'm not trying to trivialize it, but I've experienced over 30 years as this ratio of the type of cases that district judges try. I mean, when I got out of law school and first started practicing, we tried lots of civil cases, still more criminal cases tried than anything, and there was a lot of family law cases. But we tried a lot of civil cases because there was workers' comp, pre-tort reform. There's all of those things. Workers' comp went away, tort reform, med-mal reform. There are just not a lot of civil cases out there anymore, and the ones that are there get resolved most of the time before they get to the courthouse, or they get resolved on some sort of procedural issue. In the meantime, criminal filings are up, family law filing. I mean, there's a lot of people that 30 years ago just hunkered down and went through it, didn't get divorced, didn't do anything, didn't go raise their child support, didn't fight over custody. And that's not the case anymore. People want to do what they think is best for their family, and that may involve court intervention. So the amount of family law has exploded comparatively. And so I've seen judges come from a strictly civil background. They get on the district bench. They have thoughts of what it is. It isn't what they think it is. They're not really trained to handle family law. Criminal law, you can let the DA you can go along with the ride from the DA or whatever lawyers, but they're not really trained for that either. And then they get burnt out and don't like doing family law, and so it suffers. They don't like doing criminal law, and so it suffers. And so I'm the only one in this race that has been handling the type of cases that this court's going to do 9 times out of 10, 90% plus of the time. And it's not all about the law either. I mean, it's not all about reading the law in the books. It's dealing with the types of concepts, the type of dynamics that exist between prosecutor, defense lawyer and client, family litigants, family lawyers. Those things I've been shoulder deep in for 30 years, and I know all the players. I've dealt every day with all of the family lawyers, all of the other criminal defense lawyers, all of the prosecutors, all of the court staff. Everybody in those buildings know my name when I go in, and I have a rapport with them. I think a good rapport with them. I'm the only one that can say that in this race. And I think that the system will work better if I'm in there. I think if either the other two win, they're going to have to learn how to do it. It's going to slow them down, and they're going to make mistakes. And I've been firsthand have been in situations with judges who had no background in criminal law, and didn't, got onto a bench, and they're trying to deal with a very, very serious case, and they've made mistakes, and it's come back. And when it's in something like a capital murder case, whether a death penalty is involved or not, or a first-degree sexual assault case, those things come back. They cost lots of money. They cost, just even a normal first-degree case is going to cost tens of thousands of dollars to try. So you don't want to try that twice. Capital murder case, death penalty is involved, could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you don't want it to come back 2 years or 20 years later. And there's a lot from the trial bench you can do to make sure that doesn't happen. People are going to make mistakes. Judges will make mistakes. That's why there's appellate court. So you can't eliminate it completely. What you can do is eliminate it happening as a regularity, or eliminate it happening that the odds that are going to happen sooner rather than later. And I believe that I'm just the most qualified person for this particular job. You go to Dallas or Houston, there's district courts. All they do is civil work. Okay, that's great. I wouldn't be a good fit in one of those courts. I've tried a lot of civil cases. I've tried a lot more civil cases than either of my opponents have tried criminal or family cases. I think I've tried more civil cases than one of my opponents has ever tried civil cases. I tried 3 civil cases before I even had a law license under a special program we could do back then in the 80s. And so I think I have the most well-rounded trial experience, having tried over 250 jury trials, having tried thousands of family law cases that usually aren't juries, although some of them are, having dealt with, I think we counted up when we started this, we came with the number of over 6,500 clients in 33 years. I didn't really think about this till I started running, that, every day I deal with somebody that comes in that's involved somehow in the justice system. And I deal with them personally, and I deal with their problem, their issue, how are we going to resolve that, how they connect with the system, and how that's going to impact them and how it's going to impact other players in the system. My competitors, and again, try to say this in all fairness, this is not a personal thing, this is an observation. I don't know how many human clients they represent, how many people they talk to that person's skin is in the game, how many people they have in their office that they're worried about whether they're going to lose their kid or whether they're going to put their kid in a better position, whether or not this court case is going to change their standard of living, whether or not their son or daughter is going to go to prison for a significant period of time, whether or not someone who's been hurt is going to get, justice from somebody that hurt them. I don't think that they've ever had to sit and look that in the eye very much, and I do it on a daily basis. And I think that makes me the most qualified person.
Very good. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't think I do. Just let's make sure it happens on March 1st. That's what back in the fall, I was a little worried about that because we'll do it whenever they let us line up and vote, but I was afraid it was going to get moved off, and it's just it's emotionally very taxing. We're just ready to get it done and hope for the best.
Well, to me, elections they're prescribed by law. I don't think they should have the ability to change them.
Yeah.
They shouldn't. I mean,
I wouldn't think so. And I know the primaries, that's a little fuzzier on what can be done or not, but it looks like it's going to stay on March 1st, so I'm glad.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have an issue there. Well, we appreciate you coming by, and good luck in your campaign.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.